devotional. This is our third one, and we're very excited. And the title of it is called We All Have Temptations. Text from this devotion will come from James chapter 1, 12 through 13.
Verse number 12 says, Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man.
The devotion focuses on that when people say that temptations come from God, they're very wrong. Today we will share the truth about temptations.
Number 1 says, God doesn't tempt us, Satan does. You know, there's a lot of people that think that, oh, God is just trying to tempt me and put me through this trial, but really it's Satan that does it.
See, he doesn't send trials and temptations. Satan will throw things at you, but
God doesn't tempt us with sin.
Point number 2 says it is a sin to tempt God. Whenever Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, Satan tempted him. And he said, Thou shalt not tempt the Son of God.
Number 3 says, God cannot be tempted with evil, and he cannot tempt any man.
The devil sends temptations and trials and everything, but God sends love and peace.
God tries to help you through it. He knows that the devil's going to tempt you, and he messes with the saved. Not really the lost as much because, I mean, he's already, you know, like we've said before, he's already got the lost. He doesn't have the saved. He's trying to get you as far away from God as he can.
Everyone is tempted.
No one is exempt from temptation. It doesn't matter who you are, you're going to be tempted. And there's a lot of times you're going to be tempted every day. It may be through a person. I mean, it could be through, you know, material things. You know, there's all kinds of things that you could be tempted from. You just kind of have to, you know, read up on the Word and be aware of what's going on around you and your surroundings just so you can know what to do when those temptations come so you won't sin against God. Because actually, temptation within itself is not a sin, but when you fall into that temptation, then yes, it is a sin.
The last point says, in verse 12 of this chapter, the Bible reads, Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. It's good to endure temptation, and then you turn away from it, because that's just...
God's going to bless you for that.
That's signifying, hey, this isn't right, and I'm going to stand up because God told me that this is wrong. We will be rewarded with the crown of life. And he promised us, and God keeps his promises. He does not break them.
So in our Life Application Study Bible, it has notes at the bottom, and I'm going to read some. So on the notes on verses 12 through 15, it says, Temptation comes from evil desires within, not from God. It begins with an evil thought. It becomes sin when we dwell on the thought and allow it to become an action. Like a snowball rolling downhill, sin grows more destructive the more we let it have its way. The best time to stop a temptation is before it is too great or moving too fast to control. On verses 13 through 15, it says, It is easy to blame others and make excuses for evil thoughts and wrong actions. Excuses include 1, it's the other person's fault. 2, I couldn't help it. 3, everybody's doing it, so, you know, why shouldn't I? Number 4, it was just a mistake. Number 5, nobody's perfect. Number 6, the devil made me do it. Number 7, I was pressured into it. And number 8, I didn't know it was wrong. A person who makes excuses is trying to shift the blame from himself to something or someone else. A Christian, on the other hand, accepts responsibility for his wrongs, confesses them, and asks God for forgiveness. On verse 13 and 14 it says, People who live for God often wonder why they still have temptations. Does God tempt them? God tests people, but he does not tempt them. He allows Satan to tempt them, however, in order to refine their faith and to grow in their dependence upon Christ. We can resist the temptation to sin by turning to God for strength and choosing to obey his word. So that pretty much just wraps up everything that we just said. You know, this book just says it a little bit better than we can put it into words.
Even though you don't think that God is there, he's with you. He's with you through the mountaintops and the valleys.
God tests us and he allows Satan to tempt us, you know, just to see how we're going to react. I mean, even though God is omnipotent, he knows everything, he knows what's going to happen. He does it anyway because, you know, as human beings, we have free will. We have the choice to choose what we're going to do, even though God already knows what we're going to do. He doesn't make us do anything.
God tests us because he wants us to learn from our mistakes, and he wants us to grow in our faith so we can depend on Him.
Instead of trying to take everything into our own hands. That's another problem with humans, and I know I have this problem.
Yeah.
Especially because I like to have control. That's just how I am. I love to be in control of things. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, you need to let God be in control, because if you do that, your life will go a lot smoother if you let God be in control. Because usually when I try to be in control, it doesn't work out very well for me at all.
God wants us to depend on Him, and if we try to kick Him out and put Him in the back 40, hey, it's the truth.
That's the redneck version right there.
Yeah,
honey.
people do that. And if they do that, that's wrong, because they're just throwing Him out and they're saying, oh, I'm going to do this because God cannot do it a certain way that I want it to go.
In our minds, we think, well, this way is the best because it seems like the easier route, or one that's going to be more enjoyable. But sometimes God wants you to go the harder route, because that will be better for you in the end. Yeah, it may be rough, it may be a storm, but it will ultimately be better for you in the end if that's what He wants you to do.
God has a plan for everybody, and if you think that He doesn't, He really does.
I think everyone has in their mind that by a certain point in your life, you're supposed to know what God's plan is for you. But I'm still, wondering what God's whole plan is for me.
Yeah.
And people would think by, 20 years old that you would probably know, because I'm in college, woo. But no, I still don't know what's going to happen and what God's plan will be for me. I could be doing something totally different 10 years from now, for all we know.
Yeah.
Because that's what God wants me to do. You never know what's going to happen. God's plan for you may not always be the same. It may change over time.
A lot of people will say, well, God has told me that He's going to call me to the mission field and everything. And that's really good. And then somebody else may come along, well, God hadn't told me to do some great thing like go on a mission or something. God may want you to just stay where you are and be a witness and go out and tell others about God. Maybe He wants you to just live for Him, and as you go along your path, then He will put things in your life so you can do it.
That's why you don't need to try to get ahead of God, because if you try to do that, even though it may be His plan, you need to do it in His time, and otherwise you may not have the resources to be able to fulfill what God's wanting you to do. And you don't want to, get yourself in a rut or anything because you're not following God's plan.
In the book of Job, God allowed the devil to throw temptations at him, but God put a hedge of protection around Job. He did not allow the devil to kill him, but God said, you can take away his family and you can take away everything that he has. Just don't kill him. And the devil didn't. Job's wife said, why don't you just curse God and die? And Job refused. Even though that he had been tested and went through a lot of, I guess you would say, hardships, he still loved God and he still worshipped Him, and he never turned his back on God. He always depended on Him and respected Him, and he had a good, godly relationship.
Job is one of the Bible's, awesome examples of how we should react in different situations. But yeah, that's how we should react when we come into temptation. And even if, we feel like we're having so much thrown at us all the time, that's what we would need to do. We still need to love God. We still need to follow Him. We still need to be faithful to Him no matter what comes our way.
If you're His child, He will never let anything happen to you. Some people are persecuted and killed over it, but they died for a good reason. That's all we have for today, and we'll catch up with y'all later.
Bye!